Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. Now, thank you very much to everyone for joining us. If you can just quickly do me a favor and write in the comments that you can hear me fine and well, that will be extremely helpful. And in the meantime, I will start with the usual set of information. So it's been a while, but we are definitely back probably until Christmas with our usual photography review show live here on YouTube and also on our Facebook page and Facebook group Clever Photographer Academy. Now, if you've never been here before, my name is Jakub and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England, and I'm also the founder and designer behind Clever Photographer. Now, this photography review show, it's something I've been doing now for 2 years. I think I probably reviewed thousands of images from photographers from all over the world. And it's really my favorite thing to do to help other photographers look at their images and help them progress through their photography journey. Now, traditionally, we've been meeting on Mondays, usually at 6 o'clock. However, let me just quickly go through it. However, there is another show actually organized by Skylum, the designers behind Luminar Neo, who run similar show to us. And I thought it's a shame to run both of them at the same time. So we have decided to move our show to Tuesday. So starting from today on, we're going to be running the show every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Again, here on YouTube, Facebook group, and also from our Clever Photographer Academy. Now, so let's just quickly going through what we do here. We basically look at your images and we always look at the three aspects of the images. We look at the technical part. That's where we're talking about things like exposure and sharpness and camera settings and so on. Then we look at the artistic part of the image. This is where we look at things like composition, the overall message, just the kind of artistic part, and the overall feel of the image, storytelling, and so on. And finally, at the end, if I think that there is an advantage or possible bonus or maybe something that it will help, then I try to edit the image or make few edits directly in Luminar Neo. And basically we use Luminar Neo because our YouTube channel is predominantly focusing on the software, and we've been working with Skylum for quite some time now. However, most of the edits, the way I do them, you can do in any other editing software. So don't worry if you don't have Luminar Neo. The edits are pretty simple and you can recreate them in any other application. So we have all of that. Let's quickly run through some of the comments. Tony, welcome back. It's great to see you again. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being available on Tuesday. Then we have Zdeněk also joining us from South Africa. Last time I spoke to you, Zdeněk, you were not well, so I hope that you feeling fine, and I hope you maybe back shooting. I went through the pictures for today. I haven't seen any images from you. However, I'm sure that starting from next week, you will be back on track with sending images. So that's everything there. Let's just quickly talk about how you can join us for the show or how you can submit your images. Well, it's really simple. All you need to do is to join our membership, which is called Clever Photographer Plus. You can do that by heading to our website, cleverphotographer.com/forward membership. And basically there you subscribe, and for a little fee, you get a monthly bundle themed full of digital assets. Like, for example, this month we were just doing children photography, and basically what you get is a presets, LUTs, textures, overlays, backgrounds, brushes, all you can imagine. And it's really cool. You usually get around 200, 300 assets, and I think it's a great value. On the top of it, you also get access to our Clever Photographer Academy, and you get access to this photography review show where I help you with your images. So anyway, that is all out of the way. And since I actually have only small number of images, I will go through them and let's see what time we have at the end of it. And then maybe we can talk about some of the latest news and about what's coming up in the Clever Photographer world and maybe also in Luminar Neo. But still, we have some great pictures to look at. So let's start right away. Let me just open this here. So we have some landscape photography, and let's start right here. Let me just make sure that everything looks good. I hope you can see the screen. Um, and let's have a look at it. Now, I'm just quickly looking at the comments. Zdeněk saying that he sent his images. Zdeněk, if you want, you can still try to upload them there, or I will review them next week. Doesn't really matter either way. But I double check actually because I wasn't 100% sure, but I couldn't find them. So if you still submit them to Dropbox, I will try to add them later during the show and review them for you. In the meantime, let's see if I can maybe still publish the link to submit the images right here. Let's have a look if I can. Just give me 1 second. So I posted the link for the upload to YouTube. So if you can see there, maybe try to upload the images there. Otherwise, like I say, we and I will review the images again next week. So coming back to landscape photographers and starting with Donna Ruiz. So Donna, starting with 2 images, we have this church right here with that kind of HDRE painterly effect right there. And then we have this pretty nice wreck of a car, sitting in a grass and just kind of resting there. Both of the images in a similar feel and similar look, that kind of almost artistic, almost like a painting look. Both of them with similar look. They could almost be as a part of the series. So let's start by looking at them right now. So as I told you, we always start by looking at the camera settings first. And looking at it, this was captured with Nikon Z6, probably Mark II, with the lens 24 to 70. And when it comes to camera settings, ISO 160, 46 millimeters, f11, 1/250th of a second. So when it comes to camera settings, there's absolutely nothing wrong. ISO 160, the usual rule when it comes to landscape photography, as low as possible. F11, again, my favorite values are between f7.1 to f11. I really think with the years of experience when I tested some of my lenses, I think that they really perform the best in this range, f7.1 to f11. Of course, some of the more expensive lenses, they can go lower to f4 or even lower. However, I really think that for landscape photography, those values are usually great. F11, especially if you have a object or element closer to the lens, is a good choice. 1/250th of a second, looking at the image, and the daylight is probably perfect. Now, looking at it, let's just zoom in. Let's talk about some of the details, which really, with the effect you have applied, a little bit disappear. It almost feels like you have applied quite a bit of noise reduction, which in overall actually created this feel, which is not bad at all. In overall, it's quite crisp. I mean, it's dreamy look, but the details are there. So it's not like it's shaky or blurry. It's just a little bit different overall. So I don't have a problem there. When it comes to exposure, it's quite nice. Yes, the light is a little bit stronger, but there are no harsh, heavy shadows. So I think that works really nice too. There is a lovely texture in the sky. And in overall, I think the picture works quite nicely. I think it's quite nice. And for technical part, I don't see a problem there. Now, talking about the artistic part of the image and talking about the composition, for me personally, I think it's a little bit tight. And this is, again, more artistic opinion rather than something that you can measure. I just think that the church is probably really tight and close to the edges of the image. Again, from recent experience, when I was printing some images, often then when you try to mount them and put them in frames, then you really get close and it can be a little bit risky. It's not a big deal. The church is beautiful, but I would just hope that there would be a little bit more space around it. Also, if you notice, when you zoom in like this, when you really crop it tight to the building, you will then lose a little bit the sense of scale of the building. So when you look at it, you can't really say how big the building is because it's so close that it could be anything. So that's just a danger of being really close with the cropping and framing. So that's about it. The rest is quite nice. Yes, it gives you nice depth. I like the shot from the side. There is different elements, which gives you an idea of the scale. So all in all, I think it's quite a lovely picture. And to be honest, there is nothing really I would do editing wise because it already has that special feel. So in general, I think it's lovely, lovely picture. Well done. Moving on the second image right here. So again, similar feel, this time with the car. And let's quickly just run through the settings again. Nikon, so actually same camera, same lens, Nikon Z6 Mark II, 24 to 70 millimeters lens. And from the camera settings, ISO 100, f14, 1/80th of a second. Nothing wrong there. Again, nice and low ISO, maybe a little bit higher f-stop, but not a big deal. 1/80th of a second, again, considering the light and everything, I think it works well. So we can move on from there. Again, it looks crisp, considering the kind of painterly effect. There is no shake or blur or anything like that. So I think that all works really well. And that brings us nicely to the artistic part, to the composition. And I think actually quite similarly to the first image, or even more on this image, I think the composition is again quite tight. Now I understand that it's the main subject and that you really want to showcase it, but again, just a little bit of extra, I think would help. Also keep an eye on the edges at the back, just kind of trying to, maybe if you're cutting in the middle of the building, try to avoid doing it next to elements that are really visible, like the door here. It really kind of looks half cut, and it's also tilting a little bit, so that would be something there. I also wonder if you would be, or if there was any way to avoid this track, that I think would help as well to make the overall composition a little bit cleaner. But all in all, it's a lovely idea. I think both of the picture really create very specific look, and I think it works quite nicely. So it's just few ideas when it comes to framing rather than anything to do with the shooting or editing. I think it's very creative, and I really like that. I think both of the images would actually look quite good printed, and I can easily imagine both of them being printed as a puzzle, for example, or something like that. I think that would be really fun, although I wouldn't want to be building puzzles from the green at the back. So well done. Also, nothing much to edit here. Maybe I would add a little bit of vignette, but it's not a big deal. It's more, again, my personal choice. I love the edit. So Donna, well done. Great result. Lovely pictures, and congratulations. So make sure if you have more that you send them for the next week's episode. Otherwise, you take care. Which will brings us nicely to Elizabeth. Elizabeth. Let's have a look. Let's see if the images load in. So we have one right here and the other one right here. Now, Elizabeth always tell us what's on it. So let's have a look if we can see it here. This is drive through. Let me quickly have a look if I can find it. This says, so this picture is drive through Yellowstone National Park to Tower Falls, and the second image is Yellowstone River Picnic Area Loop Trail with the rainbow here, if I am right. Now this is lovely. I love this. There is many different reasons why I like it, and starting with, again, coming back to the idea of initial impression. As a photographers, once you do it for a while, once you being photographer for a while, you start to look at pictures differently. Again, I told that story several times in past. I have a friend who is a great photographer, German photographer, with incredible black and white photography. But you show him an image, and the first thing he does, he will start to zoom in and look for details and look for what's blending in and if you have any glow. And normal person doesn't do that. It's unnatural. So learning that and moving on, I have started to basically try to get an initial feel of the image, to just kind of try to catch my first impression. And my first impression of this image is lovely. I really like that. I love the leading line with the river. I love the depth. I love the balance of the image. Again, I really like the colors. I think that the orange with the green works very nicely together. I like the fact that there is some texture in the sky, and overall, I think it really works. Like, it's a really, really lovely image where there is lots of happening, and it looking almost like from movie. Now, when we start to zoom in and look for things, there may be a mistakes, but the overall first feel is great. I really, really like that. So starting from the camera settings, this was captured with Canon RP with a Tamron 28 to 300 millimeters. Now, from the camera settings, this one was ISO 250, f13, 1/80th of a second. So with the ISO, I keep repeating it all the time, especially with landscape photography. It really is worth it to try to invest in a tripod. And by doing that, you then able to set your camera there and really lower the ISO as low as possible. So 100 is a goal. 100 ISO is a goal. Now, of course, that there are situations when you can. It's not a big deal, especially something like 250 can be easily adjusted in photo editing software, but you should strike for 100. After that, f13 is probably fine here. Again, quite big depth here, starting all the way from front to the back. If you really want to make sure that everything is in focus, then I think the f13 is a good choice. And 1/80th of a second, again, looking at the light, is probably appropriate. Now, when we zoom in to at least 100%, let's have a look at it. Now, we have some noise, especially at the back. However, it's not, no, you see it's a little bit more visible in the corners and in the edges, but in overall, it's looking quite good. The sharpness, which this could be, again, due to the export into the JPEG. Maybe sometimes the JPEG actually removes the sharpness and other things. So on the first look, it looks good. Once you zoom in, you can see that some of the trees are a little bit pixelated and that there is a noise at the back. You have a little bit of that blue fade at the back as well, which I'll show you how we can adjust in a moment. And then in overall, you also have a little bit of white glow behind the trees here, together with the chromatic aberration in the trees there. Now the glow, either it's done by replacing the sky, which I'm not sure if it's the case or no, or it's when you have a big light contrast between the different elements on the image. Often the glow comes together with the chromatic aberration, and often it comes specifically at the places where you have really dark element like the trees with really bright elements like the sky. So you can really see it here. I don't know if you can see it on your screens, but you can see it in this area here, how the purple glow, and you can also see the white glow around it. So sometimes there is nothing you can do about it. Sometimes it's just the case of the camera is performing like that, but it's something to look at. So when it comes to composition, I pretty much said everything I wanted already. Love the leading lines, love the balance, love the depth created again with the canyon, love the overall composition and framing. I think everything works here. So talking about editing, let's have a look if we can actually remove some of the chromatic aberration from here. Let's have a look if we can just do that with a simple develop tool. Did it help? Not too much, so you would have to work on it a little bit more. However, I'm sure we can remove the blue tint. Now, there are different ways you can do that. Sometimes you go simply into color and you use the remove color cast, but that's not helping from there. So what we're gonna do, we simply gonna adjust the blue color with the saturation, use saturation and slider, which is gonna bring it down a little bit. And we're gonna have a look if it's actually affecting the sky. And it's not affecting the sky so much, so we're gonna do it somewhere around here, and then we're just gonna brush it in. So basically all we're gonna do is we're just gonna brush over the areas which were too blue. So something like this. There you have it. Okay, so just like that, removing that part. Of course, additionally, we can apply some vignette just like this to add a little bit more attention towards the center of the image, and there you have it. Now, coming back to the second image, very quickly, also lovely capture, a little bit different than the first one. Obviously, the main aspect here is the rainbow, because otherwise there's just lots of different things together. You would almost think that the main actually subject or the main story is the sky with the rainbow, because there is little of the rest, and the colors not necessarily matching together. So it's a lovely picture, it has a lovely feel, but if I compare it with the first one, I prefer the first one much more. Quickly running through the technical part, it's again Canon RP with the Tamron 28 to 300 millimeters. This time the ISO is much higher on 2000 with the f13 on the f-stop and 1/500 of a second on the shutter speed. Now, I wonder if you were maybe able to go a little bit down with the f-stop to f11, which actually in this case, I think you would have even be able to go as far as f7.1, f9. And by doing that, you will be able to bring down the shutter speed. And by doing that, you will be able to bring down the ISO. So it's the kind of triangle which really works together. And it's a one way to be able to lower the ISO without using the tripod. Now, when we zoom in, obviously some noise reduction was applied to it because it's not as visible with 2000. And overall, the sharpness is quite good too. The light, yes, it's again, the contrast between the two is a little bit unnatural. You have all this yellow and very saturated with that kind of moody behind. And also the image in overall feels like it's tilting a little bit. When it comes to composition, moving on that, again, I quite like the composition thinking of having the 2/3 of a sky as the main subject and 1/3 of the land as just as the following part of the image. However, I think again, there is just a little bit too little of the land. So let's have a look if we can reframe it a little bit. Let's see if we would go for 1609, then do something like this, and then actually rotate it around just to make sure that the animals looks like they're standing straight, and then maybe go for something like this. I think that would help immediately. We would get much better proportion and balance between the sky and the foreground, and then overall just balance everything together. Again, we can apply some remove color cast, and I would definitely bring down some of the yellow just a little bit and orange just to complement more the overall image. So let's have a look before and after. I think that helps as well. And I think the cropping like this helps hugely. So Elizabeth, thank you very much for sharing your images. It was lovely to see them. I was really impressed with the first one. It's a lovely, lovely photo, well taken with a great eye for framing. And the second one is very lovely too. And once you crop it a little bit and maybe adjust the colors just a little, it actually ends up being very pretty. Now, Tony, it's your time to shine. So you have sent us some flowers. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, some of them are double. Is it my computer or was there any reason? So maybe you can write me quickly in the comments, Tony, if there was a point behind sending some of them twice or if it's just that they got duplicated. But in the meantime, let's quickly have a look at them, starting with some of the roses, which are really, really pretty. You know, in overall, I love your flowers and the picture of the flowers. I think you have a great eye for it. You have a great technique and composition is always really nice. I also really like your eye for contrast. I think, for example, this is a great example where I think that kind of dark background with the dark green colors in a combination with the white flower and the yellow, I think it just works really, really well. So well done on that one. This is very lovely too. Let's have a look. Although, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of adding bees or wasps to the images, although it looks great and like very it's not easy to capture. I just sometimes I find it quite distracting, but that's more my personal opinion than anyone else. I think in this case, actually, it works a little bit better. Maybe in the first one that it kind of covers the center of it. Maybe that's why this one I think is quite lovely. Then actually it's the same image. Then we have this picture, which I think it's cropped a little bit tight on the top. I would love to have a little bit more space around. I think that would help, at least as much as at the bottom. You see here, you are a little bit too close to the edge. You see here, the animal actually helps. Maybe what I like when it's more like a supporting actor rather than overtaking the image, and then it's just too much of everything. Maybe that's about it. And let's see if that's it. So they were a mistake. Okay, so let's remove them and let's actually look at two images. So starting from this one, because I saw some noise on it, but now when I actually look at the resolution of the image, it looks really small. But I'm going to start first looking at the camera details. So this one was Canon 50D with the 18 to 135 millimeters. And from the camera settings, we were on ISO 200, 135 millimeters, f6.3, and 1,000 of a second. So the ISO 200 actually for this type of photography isn't too high at all. What seems to be quite high is the shutter speed, to be honest, but maybe it's to do with the light which was available at that moment. F6.3 again, looking at the camera, I wonder why does it show f6.3, but yeah, maybe because I'm assuming as you zoom in, the f-stop goes up. So I understand that now. So from looking at it from this point of view, I think the noise is more coming from the light contrast. So it's quite high dynamic range. You probably had quite dark background and pretty bright foreground, and there is just lots on it. But in overall, I think it looks great. I think the light is very pleasing. I really like the fact that the light is coming from the top, creating this really nice effect. The bokeh effect at the back, I think, looks great. I always really like that. When you have it needs to work in a way that it's not completely blurry, that it's just one color, and that it's not distracting the overall image. So the combination of that white and green really make you feel like the field or wherever you took this picture of the garden just continue behind. So I think that works really nicely. So composition wise, I really like it. I'm a big fan of this center composition for this type of pictures because I think it's really direct. It shows you what you're supposed to be looking at, and immediately you are looking at the main subject and you know what you're supposed to be looking at. So that's great. In overall, my only point would be the noise on this image and to see if there is something you can do about it. I mean, I could try to apply the noiseless AI here, but I don't really like to do that live because you never really know how it ends. We can try to apply some noise reduction here and see if that would help. And actually, it does help a little bit. I wonder if we would then apply a little bit of sharpness. Well, I think that's already much better. And what I would do, I would maybe add a little bit more brightness in the center. So actually, you can do that by using the vignette tool. And instead of adding the vignette, you can just bring it down a little bit. You can apply inner light just like this. So knowing that, we could apply just a little bit of mystical tool to make it even more pretty. And when we look at the before and after, I think it's quite cool. I'm quite happy with it. Actually, it's a very lovely picture. So just a little bit of noise reduction, I think makes a big difference on it. Cool. Let's move on. Let's have a look at one more picture. I was talking about the edges on this one. So that's fine there. So let's look at this image right here with the bee or the wasp. So again, captured with Canon 40D with the lens 18 to 135 millimeters. And from camera settings here, ISO 100, so really nice and low. 135 millimeters, so punched in with the f5.6 there and 1/400 of a second. And actually, I have to say, although the overall feel of the animal, I told you already, I have to say it worked quite well. I think the sharpness and the overall look of the image works quite well. What I think doesn't necessarily works the great is the strength of the light. I think the sun was quite harsh here. You can see some highlights and you can also see some darker shadows. And when you look at it, it just looks like lots of saturation altogether. So let's see if we can maybe adjust that just a little bit. So I think starting with the saturation, I would, for example, jump in the color tool. And when it comes to adjusting saturation, when you look at the image too long, you stop seeing problems like saturation and highlights and shadows. So the way to do this is actually bring the saturation slider all the way down. And then keep your mouse on it and keep bringing it up without you looking at the actual slider. You're looking at the image and you slide it until you like the result. So for example, for me, I think somewhere around here. And then I actually look back at the slider and I can see that I have only went as far as -24. Now we could add a little bit more. So maybe like minus 20. But I think that's much better than the initial one when it's really, really punchy. And when you look at it, actually, after sometimes your eyes start to hurt. Now, if you want to recreate some of the saturation, you can always use the vibrant slider, which is kind of smarter version of saturation slider. And I think that helps in overall too. Just like with all these kind of pictures, I think that vignette always help a lot as well. And maybe a little bit of the mystical tool, again, adding the kind of dreamy glow can be helpful too. Now, I have not added any brightness into the center, but I think that could actually help. And after that, this is the result. So let's have a look before and after. And I quite like it. I quite like how it ended. So well done, Tony. Thank you very much for sending your pictures over. Thank you for being patient for the review show to return. And I hope to see more images from you already next week. Which brings us to next photographer, and that's Ken. Ken usually send us images of birds. However, this time we had a lion. Let's have a look if we have any details there. And we also had two. Now, Zdeněk would know, is this camel or the dromedary? No. Either way, this is not necessarily the most artistic picture ever, especially with the car there. So let's just look at the lion right there. Captured with the Nikon Coolpix. We know that some of the data from the camera don't necessarily come over right with the ISO 360, 252 millimeters on the zoom, f5.6, 1/500 of a second. Now, in overall, it's quite nice capture. Obviously, all of us loves, lion and babies of animals, so this looks really cool. However, the first thing that struck me, my first impression, is that kind of white fade, white glow around it. It almost looks like a mist or maybe a fog, but in general, I think maybe it's actually created with a glass or something that was between you and the animal. So that I think is quite distracting, because not only that it doesn't necessarily, it's not very balanced the overall image, but it takes away some of the sharpness and some of the details. So that's a little bit of a shame. Also, I think that the front is a little bit distracting. So that's maybe something also that we would need to work on to improve the image. All in all, what you could do, you could crop it a little bit differently. Again, we can simply click on the crop tool, and let's go into free and adjust it from there. So let's say somewhere around here. And I think that helps a little bit. Then we can see if we can adjust or apply a little bit of dehaze to remove some of the haze from around. But opposite wise, I would actually add some vignette there. Vignette there, definitely position it over the face and add a little bit of inner light. After that, what we could do, we could definitely add some mystical tool to add some dreamy look to it. And also to fix the overall colors, I would apply LUT to it. We could just use the LUT built-in Luminar Neo and see which one actually works the best. Let's have a look. I'm thinking maybe something like this. Let's have a look. Before and after, and I think it already looks much better. So this is something what I would do with the image, maybe a little bit of dodge and burn, add a little bit more details with the details tool, and see if you can take it from there. So Ken, lovely picture after a little bit of editing. Actually, it's quite nice. This one, I'm not so sure. It's not necessarily a photo I could tell you much about. Just maybe if there would be the camel would be all alone or something like that, I think it would be helpful. But all in all, this one was lovely. Now, let me quickly double check if Zdeněk managed to actually upload the images. And he did. I'm just looking at them actually. So let me quickly download the images from Zdeněk so we can review them too. It will only take a second. Okay, 1 second there. Perfect and perfect. Okay, let's see if we can see them here. We can. So we have two images right here. So let's jump on them. Two wildlife captures. This one I really like. Oh, wow, that's a beautiful animal. So let's start right there. So no camera details on this one, which makes me wonder if it's captured with the cool pics. However, there is a lens which was 55 to 250 millimeters. And from the camera settings here, ISO 100, f5 and 1/500 of a second. So from the camera settings, all spot on. Obviously, again, talking about ISO over and over, 100, perfect choice there. F5, giving you quite nice depth, actually, with a little bit of softness at the black. I think that worked quite nicely. And 1/500 of a second give you really nice level of details. I really, really like that. There's lots of details there. The depth is really nice. So in overall, Zdeněk, I really like the image. Where in general, I'm not a huge fan of this kind of see-through light. Like, I don't know if you notice the studio light tool, which arrived to Luminar Neo, where you can basically just apply like a selected light, which looks like it's coming through Gaussian, um, basically like through the window. I'm so not a fan of it. Lots of photographers spend lots of time trying to avoid that, and then lots of photographers now trying to add it to their images using this tool. So normally I'm not a big fan of it, but in this situation, I think it actually works really nicely because it's not too distracting. In some way, the fact that there is quite a lot of light coming on a side of the face again creates nice depth to the overall image. The tree here again creates really nice depth. So in overall, this is a lovely picture. If I could have a wish, if I could, in the ideal world, this branch wouldn't be there blocking the animal. But obviously, in this situation, wildlife situation, you don't have that much of a choices to move around before the animal leaves. So lovely picture, well captured. Really, really like that. If again, I would have to be really picky, I would say that this bit on the top is a little bit too tight. I think it's a little bit too close to the animal. Again, coming to the point where you would want to print this and frame it and put it behind the mount. The mount always takes a little bit away from the image and it would be just very close. So that's all there. Otherwise, I think it's lovely. Now, this is also very interesting animal. The contrast isn't as, here you can really see the contrast because she gets the warm light and with the brown behind, it really makes the animal stand out. On this one, the animal blends more in with the overall feel because really the only contrast is the green, but it's still lovely, lovely picture. Let's talk about it. This one is a Canon 77D, and according to Zdeněk, so was the first image. Again, 55 to 250 millimeters on a lens. And looking at the camera settings on this one, ISO 1600, f4.5 and 1/400 of a second. Obviously, different light situation, completely understand with the ISO and with the light, and with the wildlife photography, you want to be not careful, but it just happens. Sometimes you can't help and adjust it. In overall, I don't think that the noise is that visible. Obviously, looking at it, it looks like maybe some noise reduction was applied to it, but it's not a big deal. I think it works quite nicely and it's nicely done. So the light also is quite diffuse, so that works nicely. Level of detail is great. So overall, technically, I think it's quite nicely done. When it comes to the artistic part, yeah, I already started with the fact that the animal is just not really standing out. There's lots happening around with the similar color, and in some way, the animal kind of blend into the image itself. So first of all, let's see if we can crop it a little bit to get more out of it. So I think all in all, first let's say that we are really gonna crop it. Don't worry too much about the horns to start with. Let's say that we go for something like this. So that way we get reduce of lots of the distraction. And actually, let's see if we would position the eye on the golden point, if that would make it a little bit more balanced. I think it does. We also have some active space in front of it. Maybe, in fact, we have a little bit more space here. So we can do something like this. After this, we need the animal to stand out a little bit more. Now, because the animal is already darker, I would make the background a little bit brighter, just a touch. So somewhere around here, and then just with the brush, paint it on the certain areas. So just very quickly, to give you an idea, I would basically make the surrounding a little bit brighter, and that way we're gonna get our animal stand out. So that I think helps as well. Where on opposite, we would probably apply some vignette to it, focusing mostly on the animal itself. Maybe not that strong, maybe somewhere around here. And after that, again, another way to let your main subject stand out is to play around with the details. So you can make your subject like really defined with lots of details and texture, and the rest of the image not. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna apply some details with the details tool, and then we only gonna apply it again to the main subject. So something like this. So I think that helps as well. Finally, because the green is really contrasty, it keeps taking away my attention. So just to lower a little bit that contrast, I would go into the color tool, hue, saturation, and luminance in a saturation, and I would bring down the green just a little bit, again, just to add more focus on the animal. So this is about where I would take it. Then after that, of course, you can play with it around, see what would work. For example, the dramatic tool could really make the animal stand out or not. It's up to you. Or you can apply some of the mystical tool to make it a little bit more dreamy-like. But I think this is about where I would take the image. So, Zdeněk, thank you very much. We even managed your images. Thank you to all of you for joining me. Thank you for coming back again. Now, again, let's just quickly run through it. We will be now back again for quite some times every Tuesday, 6 p.m. UK time, which I hope it's easy to find out for all of you what time it means. To join us, simply use the link in the group, Clever Photographer Academy. Also, I'm about to update the links in the membership. So if you want, you can upload the images from there. For those who are not part of our membership yet, head to our website, cleverphotographer.com/forward membership. Join us today. Get hundreds of elements throughout the years for your favorite photo editing applications, and also join us for the photography review show. So, folks, thank you very much for joining me. Zdeněk, Tony, everyone else who joined, thank you for joining us live. For those who are watching later, thank you for watching the replay. It's great to have you all here. And in the meantime, keep an eye on our YouTube channel. There is lots of videos coming for the current new tools for Luminar Neo. And also Luminar will release many new tools from today until December. So we will be covering all of that with all the update videos, tool videos, and the usual stuff. Just before we go, we have a new product coming at the end of October. So keep an eye on all our social media accounts. It's going to be lots of fun. I can't wait to tell you about it more as soon as I can. Folks, have a lovely evening. Thank you. Take care. And I'll see you again next week on Tuesday at 6 p.m. UK time.